What's going on, everybody? Marcus back again here with a video I've been actually looking forward to doing a long time. I'm actually going to make some big tier lists for World of Warcraft. So we're going to start off with expansions, then we're going to go major patches, and then we're going to go raids. So admittingly, when it comes to World of Warcraft expansions, I haven't played in all of them full time. Shadowlands isn't on this list because it's not done yet. So I had to be fair. So I also want to say that I've never played Vanilla or Burning Crusade, didn't play much in Cataclysm, and only played a little piece of Battle for Azeroth. However, just for the sake of discussion, I am going to go with my opinions on those expansions based off what I've read, what I've been told, and what I've seen on YouTube, and just my overall opinion on the content. So if you don't like it, it's not based on my experience, just my thoughts on those expansions. So obviously we'll start off with Vanilla. And I look at Vanilla as being not necessarily an expansion, but definitely an experience. And I say for a lot of people, it was a damn good experience. I think most people who played in Vanilla were very, very happy. So I'm going to have to put it at least a B or an A tier. But I'm going to put it on a B tier just for now, just to get started. Obviously, next is the Burning Crusade. Now, the Burning Crusade, let's be honest here, it's most people's favorite expansion. And for good reason. There was a lot of great raiding content. A lot of things changed for the better in Burning Crusade. So this one's definitely going to be in the A tier. Next up is World of Warcraft Wrath of the Lich King. Pretty much everyone's favorite expansion that isn't a TBC or vanilla nut hugger. There's not much to say other than that it's definitely an S tier. And it's an S tier for a lot of reasons, okay? And I want to talk about this. I want to talk about what we actually need to talk about in terms of judging an expansion. And what you really need to judge an expansion for is what was great about the game at that time and what stayed with the game at that time. So I always discuss this, and one of the things I think I've said on a previous AMA is, let's say, for instance, you really like transmogging. Well, transmogging came in Cataclysm. Does that make Cataclysm better than other expansions in that aspect because it had transmog? No. You want to know why? Because of the fact that it's still in the game. Now, in Wrath of the Lich King, a lot of things were great about it that were relevant during its time. Obviously, two of the greatest raids that ever came out, Old War and ICC. The story of the Lich King, which is like the Darth Vader of World of Warcraft. It was just really, really epic. So it's definitely S tier. Definitely has to be S tier. And coupled with the fact that it was so popular, what makes an MMO great is having people to play with. And in Wrath of the Lich King, it is the undisputed king of popularity. There was never a time in Wrath where I didn't have people to play with. And that's the one thing I'll always remember about Wrath is every time I logged in, there was something to do. I was never like, oh, this sucks. If I wanted to raid, pug raiding was like an apex, and it was relegated to servers. So that little point in time in Wrath of the Lich King is definitely S tier. Next up is World of Warcraft Cataclysm. Now, World of Warcraft Cataclysm, I think, is either a B or a C tier. And right now, I think I'm going to place it as a C tier. Now, mind you, I only played Cataclysm for about a month. I leveled one toon to max. I did a few dungeons. I think I tried leveling a couple other toons, and that was about it. Everyone I ever talked to about Cataclysm, here's a funny story. A lot of people did what I did. They quit after a couple of months. You want to know why? They were burnt out because of Wrath of the Lich King. So was I. Of course, I lost people to play with. That was the reason why I quit. And that's why I think it's C tier. I don't think it's the worst. I think that there were some great things done in raiding. I think the 1 through 60 revamp was needed, except for the fact that the LFD tool was already in play, which made it so you didn't really have to do the questing. You could just dungeon grind. And to this day, I even told myself I would love to one day do 1 through 60 through the whole quest line, or actually 1 through 50 now, during the Cataclysm, just to see how the zones changed. Because, I remember doing it. I've obviously done it a couple of times in the old vanilla zones, but it just doesn't It's not the worst because surprisingly enough, people don't realize it. There were still, I think, 7 to 9 million people still playing Cataclysm. Obviously, 3 million people dropped after the first quarter, but there was still, it still wasn't bad. Obviously, next is Mists of Pandaria. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to shock you. Mists of Pandaria, S tier. That's right. That is absolutely right. Mists of Pandaria is S tier. Probably going to be the most clipped part of this, probably going to be the most disliked part of this, but I'm going to tell you why. So, the one recurring thing about Mists of Pandaria is the theme, the songs, the settings. We went from the darkness of the Burning Legion to the darkness of the Frozen Throne to the absolute chaos and Armageddon of Deathwing and the Cataclysm to fluffy Kung Fu Pandas. Now, I understand that a lot of people are probably that's what they hate the most about it was the setting, and the setting can make things better. I think that the setting of ICC made the raid better, not necessarily the boss mechanics. Mechanically, Ulduar was a more impressive raid, but ICC thematically was just better. And I think thematically, for a lot of people, they did not like Mists of Pandaria. You know what's funny about it? At first, I didn't like it. It kind of grew on me after a while. I miss the song in the Shrine of the Seven Stars. You know, I love that part. And secondly, there's one thing about Mists of Pandaria that nobody can complain about. Content. Mists of Pandaria was loaded with content. Good or bad, it was loaded with content. The first patch 5.0, not a great patch. The raids weren't that good. When I first played Mists of Pandaria the first 2 months, I was not impressed. I didn't think the raids were good. I didn't like the dungeons, and the whole reputation grind was a bitch. However, after patch 5.1, Mists of Pandaria is on par with Wrath of the Lich King. Okay, it's not up front. Okay, it's S tier part 2 right now. And here's why. Throne of Thunder and Siege of Ogramar, no matter what you say, are comparable to ICC and Ulduar. And it's funny how they kind of share similar elements, where Throne of Thunder mechanically was the superior raid of that expansion, much like Ulduar was, but thematically, Siege of Ogramar was incredible. I mean, as an Alliance player, I am gonna siege Ogramar, kill Garrosh, and save the day. Like, it was fucking great, and that theme was great, and the bosses were great. Blackfuse, Thok, Garrosh, amazing boss fights. Galacross was fun. Iron Juggernaut, Dark Shamans, General Nazgrim, amazing raids. Class design, a lot of people like the class design. I wasn't a big fan of like having a million buttons, but I was a big fan of the new talent system, and I'll tell you why. The new talent system in Mists of Pandaria allowed me as a prot warrior to have Bladestorm if I wanted. I love that. It was like, wow, I can have Bladestorm as a prot warrior. Like, I love the new talent system. And I thought that the gear was great. I thought that the raids were great. There was tons of content. Timeless Isle, Isle of Thunder. I mean, this was pet battles. Pet battles are fucking awesome. I don't care what anybody says. They're great. Like I said, the first 6 months of Mists of Pandaria, if you take that out, it's S tier. It's S tier. And I hope that somewhere down the road that Mists of Pandaria gets the props that it deserves. So that's enough about Mists. Next up is Warlords of Draenor. Now, Warlords of Draenor, I'm going to put it actually here in C tier. And I was going to put it higher because I felt that the rating was better. And one of my favorite raids of all time is Blackrock Foundry. We'll get to that later. And Hellfire Citadel was great, but honestly, class design wasn't great. They pruned too much. There was just a lot of issues. Classes weren't fun to play. Like, there really wasn't a time where I'm like, wow, this is a fun class to play. They just didn't know what they were doing. That's why they redesigned the classes the next expansion. The only thing stopping it, in my opinion, from being D tier is how good BRF was as a raid and Hellfire Citadel. Next up is World of Warcraft Legion. Now, Legion, of course, is going to be S tier, and I'm going to put it just right behind Wrath. And this is, I know people are like, whoa, what the fuck? What the fuck? It's better than, it's not as good as Wrath. It's not, but it's great. The one thing I didn't like about Legion is the rating. I was almost tempted to say I actually liked Mists better in a lot of ways, but the rating wasn't that great in Legion, but artifact power, the gear, the settings, the zones. That's one thing I forgot to mention. Warlords had great leveling zones. Legion had great leveling zones. That new non-linear path was great. So Legion goes up there. And then finally, Battle for Azeroth. Battle for Azeroth, you get stuck right at the bottom. It was shit. There's nothing redeeming about Battle for Azeroth. The leveling zones I didn't like. The dungeons I didn't like. The little raiding I didn't like. Even though I didn't play, I only played like a tier and a half. It just wasn't very good. Just wasn't very good. So, yeah, that is that in a nutshell. Right, when it comes to now, I'm going to go over all major patches, tier list maker. Now, for this one, because of the fact that obviously I didn't play in all the major patches, I'm only going to go over the ones that I actively played in for a good amount of time. And good amount of time, I would say at least 4 to 8 weeks, 4 to 8 weeks, somewhere around that time. I can't put a number on it. I'll explain it as I go, but we're doing all major patches. My first major patch that I ever played in was obviously 3.0 Wrath of the Lich King. Now, when I first did it, I'm actually going to put it in the B tier. And the reason why I'm going to put it in the B tier was I actually didn't, when I started playing it, I was still leveling. And by the time I actually hit level 80, it was a month and a half away from Ulduar. So I'm actually going to put in the B tier because I only did Nex and I did some Eye of Eternity. I did some little stuff. I was having fun, but it wasn't that great. The systems weren't that great. We didn't have what we're going to have in the next one, which is patch 3.1, The Secrets of Ulduar. Amazing patch, A tier. First things first, as a new player, one of the things that actually happened was we got dual talent specialization. And as an arms warrior, I got an amazing ability. I can't remember what it was, I think it was called, can't remember what it was called, but it basically made Mortal Strike crit after a charge. And you could charge in combat or something like that. It was amazing PvP talent. It really made my day. And of course, Ulduar was a great raid that I sunk my teeth into. I played a lot in Ulduar, mostly PvP, but it was a great patch. The next one that I played in was Call of the Crusade. Call of the Crusade, I'm going to put it in the B tier. I actually really liked it. Actually, no, I'm actually going to put it in the A tier, actually. Yeah, I'm putting the A tier. You want to know why? Because it was the first major patch where I actually participated in the dailies that were going on at the time. Some of the dailies, like you started building the Argent tournament. You had to do dailies to build the like go get bricks or whatever. Like it was kind of cool. And then you did the jousting. And then I thought TOGC was a great raid. I don't give a fuck what anybody says. Great raid, great patch, great dailies. I loved it. Next one obviously is Fall of the Lich King. Now, I'm going to say this now. Fall of the Lich King is the greatest major content patch in the history of gaming. Like, period. Like, 3 brand new dungeons. They made some good changes so that that class balance was pretty good. The best raid that's ever come out. The best story that's ever... Fall of the Lich King. Like, of all times, this is the most epic patch ever, most amazing patch ever. So, yep, that's Fall of the Lich King. Next up is patch Cataclysm D. I only played, like I said, a month and a half into Cataclysm. Wasn't that great. Didn't like the fact that the dungeons were too hard. It took me an hour and a half to do a normal stone core, which I'll never forget. The questing was great, but everything else that came after that wasn't so good. Now, I actually have to skip all the way over to 3.0 Mists of Pandaria. This one gets an F tier. This one gets an F tier for the reason of the daily quest systems I thought were crap. The leveling zones weren't that good. The systems weren't that great. You were beginning your Shaw-touched weapon and your legendary cloaks storyline, so it wasn't that great. The reputation gear and the reputation grinds really made this just a crappy patch. And that's all I'm going to say about that. So next up is Landfall, which I think is a pretty decent patch. To me, it really got me into kind of like where I was in Trial of the Grand Crusader. Some story was building up. There were some new quests to do at Lion's Rest. They made some changes about how you can choose what loot you can get from LFR and stuff like that. So that way you wouldn't have to go to LFR as a tank to get tank gear. So it was pretty decent. C tier. Wasn't great, but it was a preface of things to come. Next, the Thunder King. This one's an A. Thunder King was amazing because it brought me back to my PvP roots, you know, going into the Isle of Thunder. You know, obviously the Throne of Thunder raid was incredible. It was the first major content patch that had this new zone that I had ever seen. I've never seen a new zone for a content patch, but there it was. And there was world bosses and pets and all these cool collectible things to get. It's a great patch, and a lot of people didn't play it, and it was pretty damn good. Next is a patch 5.3 Escalation. I didn't play this patch, so I'm going to have to stick it right here in a C tier. I kind of quit for a little while and didn't play Escalation, and I can't comment on it. So actually, I shouldn't even put it in here. So let's put it back. Shouldn't even list it. So next is the Siege of Ogramar. This one's going to be an S tier for me. I actually came back for Siege of Ogramar. I went to MMO Champion one day and decided, hey, you know what? I'm going to go to Siege of Ogramar, and I wanna. They made it so you can get gear easier. The Timeless Isle was crazy. The cool thing, the Timeless Isle world bosses could drop normal tier gear for raiding. I mean, it's fucking incredible. And the raid, as I said before, top notch. After Siege of Ogramar, we have Warlords of Draenor, the first patch. F tier for a bad launch. F tier for no content to do. You know, wasn't very good. Just not good at all. Next is the selfie patch 6.1. Enough said. It's F tier. Fear of Hellfire. I'm actually going to put this one in the B tier. It was pretty good, for me at least, for the raid. And that's about it. The raid was good. That's about it. They didn't make any changes that were worthwhile. But it's pretty damn good raid. Obviously, 3.0 Legion patch. Probably the best opening patch ever. Lots of fun. The zones were great. Getting into Mythic Dungeons right away was also an awesome experience like before, because they added Mythic Dungeons in Fury of Hellfire. But it was a great patch. Next one, Return to Karazhan, patch 3.1. This one was okay. I mean, it had some good changes for the systems, but, you know, it wasn't great. You know, it's funny, I never actually did Karazhan. I hate to say it, but I never did Karazhan in Legion. Next up is the Tomb of Sargeras. Tomb of Sargeras, so sorry, you get to be in the D tier. Raid was underwhelming. The systems weren't doing so good. And this was the patch that actually got me to quit, because as you'll see, I never actually play the Argus. I think I did it for like a week and that was it. Next up is 8.0 Battle for Azeroth. This one gets dropped into the F tier. Just not good at all. Just absolute garbage. I leveled some tunes and then unsubbed for Rise of Ashara, which gets a D tier because I actually had some fun in the raid, and there was actually some decent catch-up mechanisms with the Benthic gear. So it gets a D tier. Wasn't so bad. I'm actually going to go into Shadowlands because I actually did play 8.0 Shadowlands. I'm actually going to give 8.0 Shadowlands a B tier. It launched. I actually had a good time. I had some fun with the raids. I had some fun early on with the systems when they weren't that overwhelming, and Torghast wasn't overwhelming. And I want to put Chains of Domination on here, but I only played for a week. I'd like to put it in C or D, but I'm just going to go ahead and leave that alone. So, yeah, as you can see, Lich King and Siege of Ogramar are the two best, followed by Ulduar, TOGC, Thunder King, and Legion 3.0. As you can see, a recurring theme here. What's the recurring theme here? It's Wrath and it's Mist Pandaria, just like I went through my expansions. And you'll see now with my next segment is going to be my favorite raids and why, be a much larger list. But you're seeing a recurring theme here, in my opinion. All right, we're back again with our raids tier list maker. This one has personal favorite SA, but I'm only going to do S through F tier, just the ones that I did. First one I'm going to do is, of course, Naxxramas was the first raid I ever raided in. This one gets pretty B. It wasn't bad. I actually liked the gear more than anything, and it was kind of a learning experience, so it gets a B. The next one that I did, obviously, was Eye of Eternity, which, F. It sucked. Eye of Eternity sucked. Next raid I did was Ulduar. Where are you, Ulduar? Ulduar, obviously, not a C, but definitely an A tier. I only did a few bosses, but it was fucking good. It was really fucking good. Next is Trial of the Crusader. Holy smokes. Once again, it's also A tier. I loved it. No trash PvP boss fight because I was a PvPer. It was great. I even cleared it on 25 heroic. That's how good I was at the time. It wasn't that good. Next one, Ice Crown Citadel. Surprise, surprise. S tier and personal favorite. So Ice Crown, you are there. The next raid I did was Mogushan Volts. F. Horrible. Absolute dog shit. The next raid that I did, of course, was, where's the Terrace of Endless Spring and Heart of Fear? They are also F. And where is Heart of Fear? Where the fuck are you? There you are. You're F2. They sucked. Next one, Throne of Thunder. Throne of Thunder is also an A tier. Excellent, excellent raid. Next up is Siege of Ogramar. Siege of Ogramar. As you can see, recurring theme. It's right up in there. Afterwards, we've got, where is Highmaul? Where are you? Highmaul. Highmaul, D tier. I had some fun. Wasn't that great. Next up is going to be, so after Highmaul was Blackrock Foundry. Blackrock Foundry, you are on the S tier. I'm contemplating, is it better than Siege? This one's a toughie. After Blackrock Foundry, we have Hellfire Citadel. Hellfire Citadel, where are you? There you are. That is an A tier one. Great raid. Next up is going to be, what came after Hellfire was Emerald Nightmare. It's a B. It's not bad. Trial of Valor, you're a D. Actually, no, you're F. It wasn't tuned right. Didn't really like it. Gear sucked. Was a waste of time. Next up is going to be the Nighthold. Surprisingly, I was not a fan of the Nighthold. It's actually a C. There was a few bosses that were great, but it was kind of meh. It gets a C. And then, of course, the final one that I did of Legion is going to be the Tomb of Sargeras. Tomb of Sargeras, you also get a D. The gear saved it. A couple of bosses saved it, but everything else wasn't so good. The next raid I did was the Eternal Palace, which actually isn't on here because it's an older list, and I can't find a new one. But Eternal Palace also gets a D. Castle Nathria probably gets a B as well. And I think I did a little Snake of Domination. But as you can see, this is my list. My top 3, ICC, Siege of Ogramar, Blackrock Foundry. Once again, you've got Throne of Thunder, Trial of Grand Crusade. You're starting to see it's 3 expansions that really stick out for me in terms of rating. It's Warlords, Miss Pandaria, and Wrath. Those are the ones that stick out the most. And those patches stick out pretty well, except for, of course, the WoD patches sucked, except for, of course, their raids. So those are my tier lists. I hope you guys enjoy. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Please like, comment, and subscribe.